the time you're taking. I think we have around 2 hours. You know, your military folks are so precise in time, so I assume by 4 you got to zip out of here. So we're going to try to keep it to that. Take you through 1600, right? 1600, right? 1600. Daryl's going to be there giving me that signal of it's over. This is our latest thinking, and I think something that we have a lot of experiments always going on. So this literally we just finished putting together 30 minutes ago, and then swallowed something that I think was food very fast and very little sleep. So put all that together, we have Diet Cokes, but not bad, not very healthy for you, right? I think there were some questions that came out through the tour that our team tends to informate very rapidly. So I know there are questions about how do we balance all this with doing work. How do we assess if the garden worked? That one did not work so far, but we will iterate and find a way to bring nature into the office. So stay tuned for that one. How do we handle sexual assault prevention and reporting was another question. The short end of the answer is preventative is the best thing and catching it early, but can go into more details afterwards. How do we manage stress on our employees? TPs, LHF, things around hiring, onboarding, org silence, feedback. Do you have the strength to tell it to your face? I'm sure there's more questions. So just some of the things that our team emailed while you guys were doing the tour. We tend to work as close to real time as we can and things. We'll give you a chance to ask, and you can always stop in between, but let me just take you through this and then we'll kind of go from there. Does that sound good? So building a decision-making machine. First off, we sent a pre-read, a little brief before. Just raise your hand if you had a chance to read it. Very sheepish. Just one? Right? Two. I apologize if we're going to repeat some of it. For everybody else, hopefully, if you didn't read it, you can read it later if you'd like. So building a decision-making machine. Love this quote because one of the things that, this was a quote, I guess Albert Einstein is given credit for this. I don't know if you ever heard, if you judge a fish by how well it climbs a tree, it will live its whole life thinking it's stupid, thinking it's incompetent. And most of the business world, and I believe even in the military as well, it runs very similar to a triathlon. And a triathlon looks like this. 2 parts are on land, the running and the biking. And in fact, that's the longest distance, it's the longest part of the race. And the shortest part of the race is in the water, right? The swimming is the shortest distance, shortest amount of time. But if you ever look at the details of anybody who wins triathlons, it's always won by the swimming. It's always won by the water. The natural inclination for us, having grown up and raised and trained in the 20th century, which went from 1900 to 2000, is that we judge everything by his monkeys. Who's speaking more, the hours, should Megan and Charlie speak 50-50? And I encourage you to put your 20th century hats off and look at it not like that. Fish monkeys do different things, but as a team, you work well together. And so I'll start off with this. So I will take, okay.
If it's not clear, I'm the fish and Charlie's the monkey. Just in case it wasn't clear.
This is a lesson that took me a very long time to learn. How it takes diversity of thinking, not gender, not race, not age, but diversity of thinking, which can come in the same gender, come in same age groups. And just to give you a small illustrative example, before Megan became co-CEO, Megan, by the way, 20-year anniversary was this year. She started as one of our first student interns, became head of our revenue, and 3 years ago made her co-CEO. And it's important to be co-CEO, not CEO and co-CEO. It's not like parent and co-parent. You're both co-parents, you're both co-CEOs of the company. And people always ask that question, 50-50, who do you decide, how do you decide? Well, it's important. We argue like hell until we get to the right place. But give you an illustrative example of the kind of lessons, and this is a tiny example of how long it took for me to learn the power of team. I used to give a 1-page article every now and then to my team, and I would tell them to read this, take a highlighter, highlight the parts that are most important in this article to you. And I did the exercise beforehand. I would look at my senior team and be like, yep, exactly what I saw too. I'd look at Megan's and I'd say, I don't understand. This is 1 page. How the hell did you miss the most important parts of the article? And so then I would pick up her sheet. I'd read what she highlighted. And how the hell did I miss these points in a 1-page article? The power in diversity of thinking is that it leads to better decision making. But by definition, diversity of thinking creates tension, friction, and that is something that is very challenging to do right. But if you do it right, you will win. And if you don't, in today's day and age, I believe you will fail. And if you can die. So let me take you through before we go through there. It just happened last night. I was reading this and just found this piece of research. A psychologist from the University of Oregon said this: there are different brain systems for evaluating why and how. And when one is activated, the other goes on standby. So why is the big picture? It's why achieving the vision is essential. And you have a lot of details. You can go into that. But what's different is then how it's going to happen, the concrete and detailed how. And so this presentation is broken up, separating these two, because the mistake I used to make as a monkey is give it all together and it would kind of be twisted, mentally twisted, trying to understand the big picture while trying to understand the details of implementation and execution. So with this, at the very high level, you're here because I believe you're training to become better leaders, right? Good leaders make good decisions. Bad leaders make bad decisions. Another word for decision is judgment call. You think about good leaders have good judgment, bad leaders have bad judgment. But when you peel it back, bad information, bad data leads to bad decision making, and good information, good data leads to good decision making. And you can peel it even further back to a study Daniel Kahneman did, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. System 2 is our logical brains, the thinking slow. And to be honest, computers do this far better than human beings can. And which is why now, self-driving cars and AI and GPS and everything, this is much faster and better. System 1 is our intuitive brain, our gut sense, our judgment. Our intuitive brain, in research, it's talked about how one of the most powerful things we have, and in fact, going into this information age of people, it is the one unique thing we bring to the table that machines can't do. We can take our life experiences, take different sets of data, and see patterns that a logical system cannot see. That's what they call creativity. It's what they call innovation. This brain, by the way, our intuition, is what drives the bulk of our decision making. If you think about all the advice you got logically that you did not follow, do not marry her, right? Do not date him. All the logical reasons why it will not work out. Even when you probably joined the military, you might have had a lot of logical reasons why you shouldn't join. Or the day you choose to quit something sometimes. A lot of people may give you logical choices, but we go with our gut, our intuition. It's amazing how much that drives our decision making. Yet the research also says our intuition is very dangerous because it's wrong like half the time. And yet collective intuition, the collective intuition of the people closest to you, not strangers, who are seeing what's happening in your life, that's some of that. If you watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, poll the crowd. I think if you watched a show long enough, you knew that was one of the best cards to play. If you're stuck, poll the audience, poll the crowd, almost always going to give you the best answer. So the collective intuition, and when you think about this top portion, the first two, is the why, right? Leaders and decision-making go hand in hand. And remember, when you think about leadership, there's so many definitions of leadership. It's no different than culture or love. 100 people will give you 100 different definitions. So we think and boil it down to the one job that is most important as a leader. You need to make the right calls, whether it's to delegate it, whether there are times to micromanage, whatever it might be. Making the right call is the single most important job you're expected to do. And that is why decision-making gets so closely tied to leadership. But then the how. So we're going to take you through the why first and then go into the how. So going into the why, the big picture, why achieving vision is essential. The vision, so what's changed about the world? Let me give you a sense of the problem, which you should know, but just a good summary here. This is a study that was done, and several studies like this. David Rose is a guy I know well. He's one of the top angel investors coming out of New York City. So these are investors that invest in startups. And this is a study, and what this graph represents is of the original Fortune 500 companies, or 443 companies are off the list. And what these lines are showing is that anyone who makes it onto the Fortune 500 is dropping off faster and faster than it ever has. Meaning disruption is happening so fast that just because you're big and successful doesn't mean you're going to hold that spot. The list of all these companies and these brands, they all have one thing in common. They had to go bankrupt. All the airlines had to bankrupt themselves, redesign their organization to succeed, and many of these, of course, never came back. I love this quote he said. Any company designed for success in the 20th century is doomed to fail in the 21st century. So if you did really well in the 20th century, running the way you ran and how you operated, you're doomed to fail in the 21st century unless you make the right changes. We've done a lot of work with the CIA, helping them. The head of strategy at the CIA said this: the greatest challenge we're facing as a business, frankly, is that our business environment is changing more rapidly than our ability to adapt. In nature, this sort of thing leads to extinction. We need adaptive learning teams. So posing the problem should be nothing new, but I thought these are just good data points to give you a sense. It's happening everywhere, every industry across the globe. So to understand kind of why this is happening, one of the things that we get a lot, and Megan and I spend a lot of time in different leadership teams from different types of industries and organizations, people always come up to us saying, do you know how messed up our company is? Right? We have so many issues, and they act like they're so unique, like uniquely screwed up. And we tell them, I'll give you the good news, right? Everyone's in the same boat, and there's a very legitimate reason for it. It was successful before. But to understand some of this, we learned some of the greatest insights working with education and understanding the connection between school and work. And I don't know how much of you know this, but school was invented as the training ground, just like the MCWAR, the Marine War College, as a training ground for work. And it was actually invented in 1750 by a guy named Frederick the Great. It was the king of Prussia who invented public schools. Kindergarten was the gardening of children. So what he did to create public schools was first met with his advisors and said, here's my objective. Let's reverse engineer what we need. What we need and what I need is I need loyal subjects to the king. What is the best way to train the most loyal subjects to the king? And they sat around and they came up with isolation and fear as the two, you laugh because you still might have a lot of this, right? Isolation and fear are the driving principles. When you bake in an entire school system with that, you will get the most loyal subjects to the king. As a result, desks in schools are set up where every student is isolated from each other. On top of it, every semester, every year, the student, and the teacher, the relationship is always changing, so you can't build a long-term relationship. You guys just do it every 2 years, right? But then you have fear. Students fear teachers, teachers fear principals, principals fear superintendents. These two principles, baked into every aspect of the public school system, created the most loyal subjects to the king. It worked. Well, fast forward, 1920, which, by the way, is 20% of the way into the 20th century. The 20th century is 1900 to 2000. A guy named Cubberley said, we have a different need. We need assembly line workers, followers, who will do exactly what we say in the factory. And this is a picture of the factory. Everyone, right, had to do exactly the same thing. They say people were just a function or piece of the machine. So they sat down, researched what principles, and they upgraded the two principles to be compliance and uniformity. Follow the rules, right? Compliance was a big thing, and compliance training of all sorts. And then uniformity, everyone did the exact same thing. And if you think about how public schools are built, they run like an assembly line. You go from math, then you jump to reading, you might jump to drama class, just moving down, no sense of how they connect. And everyone goes through the exact same curriculum in the same grade. And this type of training created the greatest followers of instruction, or assembly line workers. Now, most people we talk to say, oh my God, we're still, I think, in 1.0, maybe, way too much 2.0. Well, this is everybody in every place because this is what the world needed and it worked. Well, fast forward now, 21st century, it started at year 2000, Y2K, information age. And so we had the privilege of spending time with the most cutting edge schools that were experimenting and changing education and the most cutting edge workplaces in every industry, whether it's medicine, sports, you name it. And this is what we saw and found. In education, the two new principles were creativity and collaboration. Creativity, by definition, is making something that did not exist. When people talk about, I make data-driven decisions, the caution is all data comes from the past. And so if the future looks exactly like the past, data-driven decision-making is awesome. But if the future, the term military created was VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, if the future is changing and is unpredictable, making pure data-driven decisions is lethal because you'll make the wrong calls. You'll always be one step behind. Parenting is like this now, right? You ever try to celebrate a birthday party at a school? It is VUCA. There's like a 60-page PowerPoint in our school of what you can do to celebrate a kid's birthday at school. And all the things you cannot do and the approved vendors and the whole 9 yards, right? And the percentage of the class you must invite to be able to hold the party. If not, you have to invite everyone. It's crazy, right? Like, you ever try to get a kid to eat vegetables? It's VUCA. In my day, it was literally very simple, right? It was on your plate, you're going to eat it, or else you don't move. Seinfeld had this great thing, so I digress a little bit, but he was talking about bedtime rituals. If you have young children, he's like, my bedtime ritual is kind of like coming from the British Parliament, where it's like a royal ceremony that you bring them to the bedroom, and there's a semicircle of stuffed animals for emotional support, and then you're reading through like a whole bunch of books with nonsense words in it to before eventually they go to sleep. He's like, my version of how bedtime worked was I had a friend called Darkness. So it was a lot different. Creativity, right? Creativity was one of the top things that's important, which is another word for innovation, but collaboration, working in teams. Solo stars no longer win. And in fact, in all the research, they will find innovation is creativity done in teams. It's a social process. You need the thinking of diverse individuals to be able to be creative together, and that innovates to things that matter. When we went into work, we found these two to be the most important things. Decision makers. Work creates decision makers now. 261 Fifth Avenue, this building here, is a decision-making factory. The Marine War College is a decision-making factory. You're creating decision makers. And the rate of learning, as in how fast you're getting better at that, matters a lot. In other words, you're making leaders, not followers. And these two connect, and this was what we saw of the most cutting-edge institutions out there in the 21st century. To take this further, there's a guy named Roger Martin. We spent some time with this guy. He's known as one of the strategy experts of the world. He did a 10-year study with a guy named A.G. Lafley. A.G. Lafley was a well-known CEO of Procter & Gamble, the consumer goods company. They did a 10-year study, and in the course of the 10-year study, the data changed. So he shared with us the first set of data he found. When they interviewed big company CEOs, they always worried about other big company CEOs. US always worried about Russia, right? You always worried about big companies only. Strategy changed every 1 to 5 years. So you even have 10-year plans, 5-year plans, the 3-year, and definitely the annual strategic plan that gets created. What you produced was either a product and or service. And every organization did this. But in the course of this study, they saw the data points completely change. CEOs worried about 2 kids in a garage. Simply with their creativity, we're going to disrupt and out-innovate companies the size of JP Morgan Chase. Fintech is killing finance right now. They're not able to hold ground. Strategy changed so fast because the underlying assumptions were changing that by the time you printed your strategic document, it was already wrong. Every organization now produces decision makers. This was the big shift they found in their 10-year study. I love this story because this is right before 1997 here, the cusp of the 21st century, at the end of the 20th century. So it's a little embarrassing because I'm Korean in this, but the most fatal airline with human errors having the most crashes and accidents in the 1900s was Korean Airways. Korean Airways. And Malcolm Gladwell did a study on this, and he talked about the reason why that was happening. Because organizations are designed to give one person authority, all power. And it happened that in Korean culture, this is further exacerbated because there's a pilot and there's a co-pilot. The only two people in the plane that have the view of the front. Nobody else has the information or data to see what's happening. And so they're the only two, and there's a doorway no one else can see. And the senior person, culturally, is so ashamed of showing fault, modeling mistake making, that they will kill themselves on the whole plane rather than swallow their pride and say, I think we might die. I don't know what I'm doing. They cannot utter those words. The junior person, the co-pilot, culturally it's set up that rather than say, pilot, sir, like, I think we're about to die, you're going to do all the wrong things, they sit there and literally kill themselves to preserve the cultural makeup that says you don't interrupt, you don't make the senior person look bad, you don't, that tension of decision-making done the wrong way led to Korean Airways be the airline with the worst track record of human errors and accidents occurring. And it's fascinating, it's a totally non sequitur of how they fixed it though. There's many things they did, but one of the things they did was they trained everyone to speak in English, not Korean. They had to literally make them think you're not Korean culture to be able to get them to act properly. There's many things, but that was one of the things. But when Malcolm Gladwell shared the details of what they found, this is what they found, that most accidents are preventable, just like the sexual assault question someone asked. It's preventable because you see the signals, and accidents are usually an accumulation. When 7 consecutive human errors occur, pilot didn't sleep the night before, you have a new stewardess or steward on the plane, there's new things occurring, and there's accumulation of this and nobody speaks up, what they in research call org silence. And you watch the accumulation of errors, there's no timeout, no reset. After 7 is when the accident occurs. This shows up in the medical field, it shows up in every field. If you like football, it shows up always in football. Fumbles are the worst, right? But fumbles never lose the game. It's the 6 errors that follow the fumble that make you lose the game. 7 errors, human errors in a row is what leads to accidents. In the same way, it takes 7 micro decisions, 7 right calls to be able to innovate. At the speed we're moving, this need to get that many decisions right or to stop the process of 7 wrong decisions in a row. So I'm going to give you a little mental break from the why, because I hope that shows how important decision-making is, why it's so important in the 21st century. And if you think about all the reasons why we're so messed up as organizations, it comes because that design worked. It was the most effective way. Someone we met called it the medieval military style of management. It is incredibly good at discipline and getting things done if you know what exactly to do. But when you live into a VUCA world, where you need adaptive learning teams and everyone has to decide at the fringes of everything, the medieval military style management is terrible at innovation, great at discipline. So why this is essential to fix and get right? We are in no better time because, as the history showed, 20% of the way into a new century, which for us right now is 2020, is when the old model completely goes kaput. When school is changing, when public school is changing, trust me, work has to change faster. So changes are occurring everywhere very fast. So really quick, before I go into the how, I'm just going to walk you through our business a little bit. Not the business model, everything, but bits and pieces of it to help you understand who we are. So we met a guy, this is 24, almost 25 years in business, who said there's a process of storytelling called the ABT. It's and, but, therefore. And we struggled as we built our business to explain the elevator pitch of what do you do? And we're like, how much time do you have is the next question we ask always. Megan wrote this up when we were there just with this storytelling coach and said, Next Jump is a technology company, started in 1994 as a coupon business and developed into a successful e-commerce business on a platform called Perks at Work. But the world started changing and a bigger issue emerged around company culture. Therefore, we built a second business to help companies upgrade their culture. It started as a social movement, but the problem grew so big it became a business. So part of where that comes from and some of the mistakes is my father. I won't go into the full story, but he's one of the most famous corn scientists in the world. His life mission has been to end world hunger. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 5 times. I don't believe he'll ever win, though. And he has imbalances of what he did. But the biggest thing, and he's alive today still, and he's still trying, but he's done everything imaginable wrong in the sense that he spent so much time trying to end world hunger. You can't do a lot of good if you don't know how to take care of yourself. If your cup is empty, you can't spill over to help others. And he's been running for his whole life on empty. And not recognize that filling your cup isn't selfish, isn't you not being good. It's actually you getting stronger so that you can do more good. The lesson of the imbalance, right? I love this quote. You can do more good if you're profitable and make more profit because you're good. A South American CEO said this, I love. Giving back means you took too much. People talk about, I want to give back, right? Usually mean later in life. It just means you took too much. And the imbalance that occurred is that my dad was imbalanced in trying to do more good, just do more good. Most companies in our industry just make more profit, make more profit. And this imbalance is no good. Said another way, we call it better me plus better you equals better us. My dad represented better you, highly imbalanced without better me. And most companies represent better me without the better you. You need both. And life is an act of balancing as you get imbalanced. You always grow by being imbalanced, but you must balance. So what happened for us? We have our revenue business, the Better Me, that funded and that's been the cash flow of our business. And we have a belief that if you want to fix the problems in the world, you can't leave the nonprofits to do it. Not because they aren't good people or they aren't trying hard. It's that they don't have the capital, they don't have the people, nor the technology. So we put our business hats on and said, where does that exist? Who has all the capital? Who has all the people, resources, and the technology? For-profit businesses. And our view is until they get in the game and they bring the cavalry, you'll never fix most problems in the world. So we took it upon ourselves to not only lead by example, the Better Me, but then help other companies follow suit. So a social movement to help change workplace. We worked on this and people mocked us, they laughed at us, they fought us. Board members tried to fire me twice in this process. They believe business doesn't run this way. Thank God for the 21st century because it caught up. And we saw a huge change. You now hear, the talent wars, the level of unemployment. The brightest talent out there refuses to work for a company that does not do good. But also the brightest talent generally doesn't want to work for a company that doesn't make profit. You need both, and that's the requirement if you want to attract, retain your talent. And without talent, you're going to die. You won't exist as an organization. So this social movement grew, and in many ways, what we did was this. We focused on how we make money, but every business always runs 2 businesses. How you make money and how you run your company. Every business, including the Marines and everyone out there, is running 2 businesses. We just spent a lot of time, more than most people on this side. And in the process, we ended up building a lot of technology. We did something very unusual. We don't have an HR department. HR is the job of every employee. And in fact, 50% of your compensation, base salary, bonus, and equity grants is tied to how well you run our company. 50%. Well, we have mostly engineers. And engineers, especially when they're getting 20 job offers and they graduate at 21, do not like to work on anything except their engineering. They're the talents, the most sought after talent right now globally. So when you tell them your job is to run HR, you have to run onboarding, you have to run recognition, you have to run, performance evaluations. They got angry. And they started hating this repetitive HR work. So guess what they started to do? They started to build technology to speed it up. In their free time, on the weekends and the evenings, they ended up building 50 different applications for us, mostly on mobile phones, to do everything that HR was doing slowly. And before you know it, we ended up building an entire product suite. And in our social movement, this culture tour you took today, we do around 3,000 to 4,000 of those a year. And as people did the tours, the next question was, can you teach me how to do what I just saw there? That led to a leadership academy you're running, and you're part of our, what we call a half-day academy. We run a full 3-day academy on just feedback. Then we run another full 3-day academy just on coaching. We just had a 2-day academy on hiring and onboarding. And then there's a 2-day academy for recognition. There's a whole series of academies. We started this almost 5 years ago now. Pro bono, never charged, but it's hard as hell to get in. We have a wait list of close to 1,000 people at any given point for their academies. But free is harder to do than charging because you have to do it right. We select. And the thing we always look for is what we say, highly competent individuals who are good from within. It's kind of a rare combo as much as it shouldn't be. There's a lot of highly competent evil people. And then there's a lot of really good people that aren't so competent. But to find a balance of those two, and that's the general screening we've used. And we've had the chance to see the insides of so many organizations. I mean, you name it, you may have seen some of the people who have come to our academy. We gave so much, and people say the more you give, the more you get. It's a true statement, but we learn sometimes it takes a long time before it comes back. Sometimes 5 to 10 years later, people come back saying, remember when you helped me? Oh my God, that was a lifesaver. I now want to bring all these chips back to you to help you. So in the process, as we ran academies last 5 years, people then started asking, what technology do you use? Well, we have these homegrown systems our engineers built. We show them, and the larger and larger companies, as well as small ones, started saying, can I license it? And we said, that's not our intent. We built it just to run our company. They said, look, I'll pay you for it. We said, it's a social movement. They're like, I'd rather pay you, is what a lot of them said, because I'd rather have the security and the enterprise version. So what wasn't meant to be a business turned into a business to give us more fuel to do more good, make more profit, do more good. One of the first clients we're launching with is the Navy. And this is a note that the CMP, the head of HR at the Navy, wrote saying, at the forefront of innovative HR technologies, NextJump uses their innovative yet simple applications and tools to promote high-performing cultures, provide increased opportunities for coaching and professional development. NextJump's HR technology equips organizations with tools that support building a high-performance environment. So we have gone through the process, and right now we have a waiting list of clients looking to adopt our technology. And this part of our business is actually what we call Business 2. It's starting to take off at a faster clip than we saw in Business 1. We met with a New York Times reporter, shared this in a staff meeting. Our business is not that different than how Amazon grew. Amazon actually has 2 businesses too. Business 1 is their e-commerce business. For over a decade, that business, it's a small, low-margin business. In fact, Amazon, for the most part, lost money in that business. It created a market cap around $18 billion. But then only in 2009, they took what they were doing internally to run their own website, Amazon Cloud Services, the Amazon Web, AWS, and they made it a business, and the profit margin in that business being far greater is what exploded the value creation of Amazon, where today it is a $1 trillion company. It went from 18 billion to $1 trillion in less than 10 years from Business 2. So the New York Times reporter who wrote our story 10 years ago just came back in 10 years later and said, oh my God, you're following Amazon's footsteps. Business 1 is your e-commerce business. It's profitable for us, funded everything, but much more lower margin. This other business has a very high margin, a very high, 90% margin for us in this part of the business. And this is looking to grow faster than Business 1. The balance of you can do more good if you're profitable and make more profit because you're good. You may have seen the tour. We drew this hand-drawn diagram. Business 1 actually funded the creation of Business 2. But as we sell technology, the question that every client came to us with is, can I get consulting help? Meaning, they don't call it consulting, but can I get on-site people to come? Can I have people visit my bases, give account services and whatnot? And we said, we don't want to go into that business, but we have dozens of consulting partners, the EYs, McKinseys, and small boutiques, who said, if you can train me on your technology and what you do, I will do that work for you. So we said, that's great. We'll do that. And we'll take an annual percentage cut of 30%, just like the Apple App Store, like 30%. But we're going to donate 100% of our take into an education foundation where we're going to give it away to help the education system. So we've started this process, giving grants to public schools, charter schools, social services. And this model allows us to do more good as we make more profit. The more this succeeds, picture Amazon Web Services if they had done this from the beginning. But the more profits that AWS created their business to, the more they would put in give as you go, helping nonprofits, education, the social movement that we cared about. So we're pretty happy with how this is working out, but early signs still. That's next jump. And hopefully that gives you a little sense of who we are and kind of what's important to us. I'm going to shift gears back to now why the whole decision-making factories that you want to build, how to do it, how it's going to happen, concrete, and some details behind it. So going back to the same slide, right, the why and the how, I'm going to go into this side of the equation now. This is punching in our Boston office. It's in Cambridge from New York. The notion of signal versus no or fuzzy signal, what I call the blue dot. If you ever take your phone, right, and you use Waze or Google Maps or any of the applications you use, and you first punch in where you want to go, your goal, your destination, right? It puts this marker on where you want to go. But the very next thing it does is goes to figure out the blue dot of where you are. And have you ever driven in a place you don't know, and the signal starts kind of cutting in and out, what I call the fuzzy signal or no signal, and the blue dot starts jumping, right? Where it's like you're on the road, but it jumps in a building, or like it jumps in the water when clearly you're not driving in water. How maddening and how panicked do you feel, right? Almost like I have to stop the car to reorient and get a sense of where I am. God forbid I drive one more mile, not sure if I'm going in the right direction. We don't think about the blue dot a lot. We think a lot about where we're going to go. Where do I want to go, but where am I now? Said another way in our careers, who do I want to be? But it starts with who am I now? We obsess on who I want to be. We don't spend enough time understanding how difficult this is to figure out. Now, people say, well, I do that like once a year. Your manager sits down, gives you a performance evaluation once a year, right? To figure out who you are now, right? And may give you a little pep talk of who you can be, right? How far you can go. Once a year. Imagine if you use your GPS to drive, like most of you may probably drive to work every day. If you can only get a sense of where the blue dot is once a year, once a quarter, there's no way you can navigate. You need signal, and you need signal consistently to know how to navigate. And fuzzy signal, anyone that's experienced the jumping blue dot, is absolutely no good. And it paralyzes most people when they drive. Decision-making in the 21st century looks like this. The road looks like that. And people say, hurry up, because if you don't move, you will die. The way they call dying is disruption. I say you're either a disruptor or you're going to be disrupted. And if you're not quite sure which side you're in, I can give you a pretty good sense you're being disrupted. It is high stakes, and you need to make the right calls. The days I wish as CEOs we could make 2 to 3 right calls once a year. They say an average leader has to make 100 decisions a day. Every day, 100 decisions. A non-response is a decision. Nodding your head, looking away, everything is a decision. And they say that to get nothing less than being an A leader, that's, by the way, by the math, 95. You have the right to make 5 wrong calls a day and 95 right consistently. And they say that B leaders, B CEOs should be fired. That means if you make 15 wrong calls, you should be let go as a leader. That's pretty high stakes. And one of the hard lessons I had to learn as a monkey was this. Most human beings can consistently average a B. Now, there's many who can't even get there, but if you make it to the ranks you're in at the top, most people can get 80 to 85 consistently correct. And so yes, it might be 10 or 15 more decisions you need to make consistently right. But those 10 or 15 decisions, just like the triathlon on the water, is the difference between being an A leader, an A CEO, or a CEO that needs to be fired. And that's the fish monkey component most people struggle to understand. It's not a numbers game of more decisions being right. It's the most important 10 that matter to get you to be an A. This is what most of us get, what we call our echo chamber of BS. They say you're the sum total of the 5 people closest to you. We get to choose, usually once you're an adult, who that is. And yet we surround ourselves with people that give us no or fuzzy signals. How did I do? Wow, you were great. Only you could do that well. Did well given the circumstance, couldn't get better. This is what we get. And we need to navigate that VUCA world, making 95 right decisions every single day with signal that looks like this. Now, to translate it into something specific, Megan and I spent some time training. We spent quite a bit of time training different 2-star generals, 1-star generals at their promotions. They have a whole week training session for different services. And so this is a true story, giving you an example of what the echo chamber can look like. 2-star general, after the whole day's over, late night, 10:30 at night, they come to us, and this is what one of them said to Megan. What do you do when our senior leadership is so dysfunctional? They propose an idea of what we should do. We all nod in agreement. The meeting ends, the senior leadership leaves. We all talk about how we should never do that. It's the worst idea. Then we all go back to work. This is, from what I hear, very common, not just in the military, across almost every industry. And remember, the truth was in there, but everyone just chose to go back to work. Everyone saw, enough people saw what was wrong. And senior people then do the, well, you know what? It doesn't happen to me. You know why? Because I always ask, I want some feedback from you. It really matters. So I earnestly ask for feedback. And they believe they get feedback, but they don't recognize it's the same 5 or 6 usual suspects giving the feedback. Maybe the echo chamber of BS monkeys giving the same feedback. And you think you got feedback. But any time there's an accident that ever occurred, if you ever go and investigate, you'll find someone knew something and they chose not to speak up. Someone saw something, someone knew something, someone saw trending signals and they chose to not speak up. Then it accumulated from 1 to 2 to 7 mistakes, and boom, is when the accident occurs. This occurs in sports injuries. They say 90-something% of concussions can be prevented. You can see the concussion coming usually 90 days prior to the concussion. The trending signals show up way before the accident. So we ended up building technology. Once again, not because we planned to. Our engineers didn't want to do the manual work. They ended up building a system that helped us catch this collective intuition. And then the training tools around it, and that helped us get the System 1 collective intuition that then helped leaders, that helped decision makers make better decisions. Now, this all sounds great, but the way it comes out is not so pretty. So before I kind of show you this piece of feedback I got, right? It's scale of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is like a GPA, it's awful, right? 4 is like perfect GPA. So 4 being the best, 1 being the worst. So to give you some context, we have many things that we cover in the company. One of them that's a very sensitive topic has to do with foreign national hires we have. The H-1B, the green card process, and we have a no firing policy. It's a long story of all of that, which if you're interested, you can ask to tell you more about later. But there's a heavy cost, an additional $40,000 when we hire a foreign national to go through the visa processes and eventually the green card process. So despite having a no fire policy when you're hired in, we didn't give an automatic green card. We actually said, if you end up being a really bad employee that's not fixing after all the help, we will consider not sponsoring a green card until you actually turn the corner. And most people usually have like a 5-year or plus window. And we thought that was kind of a good judgment call, right? Being savvy as a company. We shared it in front of the company. After the company meeting, 3 people came up to Megan and I saying, that's the right call. I'll do the same thing. I totally understand that is the right thing to do. And we heard this from foreign nationals as well as, non-foreign national hires of ours. Thought, great. I'm glad I shared that information. I'm glad that people saw, the right thing to do. And we just kind of went by our way. Well, as I sit at lunch, my phone starts lighting up with feedback. And the feedback pretty much sounded like this. What I garnered from what you said today is that if an international employee does not meet your expectations, you won't help them get a green card. Since the H-1B lottery is not guaranteed, they're effectively put in a position of mercy, and practically speaking, if they do not get the lottery, they'll be effectively fired. Since they can't legally work for the company anymore, I think with this mindset in place, it'd be dishonest to advertise that NextJump has a no-fire policy. Now, this is the nice version of the feedback I put in, because you didn't want to hear the really bad ones. The reason why it's anonymous is because it provides the psychological safety, the attribution, the repercussions. I mean, the first thing when I see that is, I want to know who said this. Then I see like 40 of them come in, and I'm saying, because I'm a monkey, I want to know all 40 people, right? Megan's like, there's a pattern, all 40, right? The notion that there are second and third order consequences from decisions senior people make, because we don't have the data, we don't know what that is. And the power of getting that, because then it changes what we do. It might even be in the messaging. It might be in the tiniest of things. In our case, not the only, but one of the main things we did was we have a leadership team voted on by the employees called the MB21. The MB21 must unanimously agree to put someone into the green card process. And that already made it better. Versus when we announced it, it looked like Charlie and Megan would just choose. Don't like you? No. Like you? Yes. But that came because of signal, of feedback we got. And despite the fact that we thought we got feedback, which is what I call the approximately 0 pieces of feedback, the three to six people that come and give it to you, the same 3 to 6, it was more powerful to know the collective thinking of our population. So really quick, how feedback fails. And there's many ways it fails, but the top 5 reasons, I'll go in reverse order, of why we don't get signal. So one thing, in fact, I'm guilty of it. I just came in and said, I didn't sleep much, I'm drinking Diet Coke. We draw out sympathy, right? I literally just did this, right? We finished this 30 minutes ago, right? I just have to add, I'm so proud of this work. We work so hard because we care about you guys. I want to add so much value, and I got no sleep last night drinking Diet Coke. Please give me feedback. I'm going to draw out sympathy, not the truth. Number 4, ladders of inference. And if you've heard of this, most of us share our conclusion. But if you think of any set of data, information out there, nobody sees all of it, right? What you leave out is the data I select, otherwise known as my assumptions. Then you leave out my approach, how I process that data. And we all butt heads on conclusions. But if you were able to share the assumptions I made from what I saw and the way I processed that data, my approach, and then said that led to this conclusion, it's a lot easier to give feedback. Number 3, biases and blind spots. And in fact, confirmation bias. And if you've heard, it's the most dangerous of biases. You hear what you want to hear, right? And you reject what you don't want to hear. So you say, I got the data. Yeah, I rejected all the things that didn't make sense, right? The outlier data points that didn't agree with my points. And I picked all the ones that made sense, and here you go, right? I made a data-driven decision. Care versus direct. We are it's often called the shit sandwich, right? I don't know if you've heard this. Someone said that the best way to give feedback, right? Like, as in the direct, harsh, critical shit, you just add more bread, and they can't see the middle part. So when you start off by like, wow, I think you're amazing, you're so great, but there's something you can improve on, but oh my God, you're amazing. I mean, your career is going to go so far here. And what do you think they walk away hearing? We have, what was it? You're so great. Oh, thank you. No. That's the wrong way. Oh, sorry. No, that's a very monkey thing, right? We learned this actually visiting Parris Island with the Marines. We actually love this. You have this thing called first hat, second hat, third hat, fourth hat. I think the first is the best, right? Fourth is the worst. Do I have it backwards or no? I think the most senior is first, right? Hats 2, 3, and 4 do not get to practice care. They have to be direct. Only the most senior person who has earned their way has the ability to show care, the first hat. And we loved that when we saw it. It's built into the way you train your Marines. You have to first practice being direct, but we all instead practice care. And then we kind of dip our toe into being direct and we never get there. And we end up in this category that they call manipulative insincerity. You look insincere. People don't trust you when you actually give them your feedback. Even when you say the truth, they don't trust you because, you know, in American Idol, Simon Cowell, they love him because he's good at being direct. But when you eventually are direct, to the point where you could be an obnoxious, aggressive a-hole, if you don't learn to add care, society will ding you pretty hard. But care is something that comes last in the equation, not first. And learning to tell the truth and show directness is a very hard thing for people to do. The number one reason, though, why we find feedback and telling the truth doesn't work, Megan coined a term many years ago called LHF, lying, hiding, and faking. Life is like a game of poker. We're at the poker table and everyone is bluffing. Everyone is lying, hiding, faking, trying to look good, managing other people's perceptions and views of them, nodding when you have no clue what they're saying. When they ask you, do you get it? I totally get it. You find a way, whether you're lying, which, by the way, I know you hate to lie, but full half-truth is a lie. Right? I've had this discussion with my spouse many times, right? I told you the truth, right? That wasn't the full truth. You left information out. That is lying. There is hiding. You're just silent. You just kind of sneak in a corner. There's faking, acting like you know. The process of doing this, we spent time with some of the best brain doctors in the world, neurosurgeons. They scanned the brain while asking questions, and they found this. It takes twice as much brain power to lie than to tell the truth. Most of us, on average, showed up in the research, will spend around 2/3 of our waking hours lying, hiding, faking, and only 1/3 telling the truth and doing the actual job. Playing politics, trying to look good, going to meetings you don't need to go to simply because you got to show face. This is where 2/3 of our time goes. Single biggest waste in human energy, if you can recover it. So I'll leave you with one last story. We've had the privilege of meeting so many amazing people. One of them is a guy by the name of Peter Gorman. He's over here. So Peter Gorman is a self-made billionaire. The technology in polar tech, heart rate monitors, treadmills, and Stairmasters and so forth. He invented that technology. So he has a right to 10% of everything polar tech sells globally for 20 years. It's a big number. I think he had said he gets royalty checks somewhere in the $2 to $4 million a week, right? Kind of nice, right? He's done well, but he went and created several other businesses afterwards. And one of the businesses he created is this blue strip you see on the treadmill. It's called the Optogate. They combine two technologies, the lens of the Hubble telescope that can look 1 billion light years away, as well as lasers from ski racing. And they created a gating machine that pointed at the human body 1 billion light years away, but right at the human body to see what happens. And he's done some amazing things with this Optogate machine, because his point was human beings, it's all about balance. When you're born as a baby, you're trying to learn physical balance, and then you eventually get balance. But when you die, you lose balance, and it's like an arc. And what crazy stuff he's done, for example, this is one of the best stories I heard of this. The US Olympic team used to go to its destination site 3 days before the actual tournament. Right? You're training 4 years, right? And oftentimes the difference in gold or even medaling is like a fraction of a second, right? 3 days before they would go. So as a test one year, they Optogated every athlete before they went onto the plane. And when they got to the destination, they Optogated them. And they found that when they did this daily, it took 5 days before the score they got in the plane, the balance score, showed up again 5 days later, meaning the vibrations in the plane made you lose your balance, that it took 5 days to recover a match that you trained 4 years for because you came 2 days too late. Every US Olympic athlete goes 1 week in advance now for that reason. So he's done crazy stuff, but the two best things that he did was this. 2 separate occasions, he met 2 individuals, paralyzed neck down. They were told after the best rehab, 6 years, best rehab in the country, that they would never walk again. Strangers he just met. This guy, Peter, lives in Mayopac, and it's an hour and a half away from here. He met one of them, just while trying to, walk around the jogging field, track, and said, come to my office. Let me help you. What happened? Had a plate in his brain rot that paralyzed him neck down, told he could never walk again. He got this guy, Michael, walking again in 90 days. 90 days. And then did the same thing to another guy who played football and got injured. 90 days, right? He's called the miracle of Mayopac. But being somewhat of a overconfident monkey, I don't believe in miracles. I want to know how'd you do it. So we call him Doc, and I was like, Doc, what's the trick? How'd you do this? And he said, Charlie, it's actually fairly simple. He said, all human beings are wired to self-correct, to do the right thing. But we often don't know what is right and what is wrong. So we end up doing the wrong thing. When you injure your right foot, we tend to, do this, hop on our left. Yet if you want to heal, the very thing you need to do is press through the pain and put pressure on your hurt foot, your right foot. And over time, you will gain your balance back and you will heal. But that's so counterintuitive, we end up getting more and more sick. So in this case, he said he created what he called a second screen, which is a real-time view of you walking and how you should be balanced. And you have to ask, well, the person's paralyzed, neck down, they can't walk. Well, they put him on the treadmill at a very slow speed, had two grown men on either side move this person's foot, Michael's foot, on either side to show him the way he should walk. And he did this every day for 90 days. And by day 90, he's walking, and now he's running marathons. Kind of crazy, right? But this insight that we are wired to do the right thing. The right thing, make the right calls, make the right decisions. But we need to have the second screen, the collective intuition, the feedback, to know what to do. And when we do, despite how critical and harsh the feedback is, human beings will do the right thing. Someone in the military gave us this nickname, MCWAR. So, notion of Megan and Charlie, if you didn't.